Hello, everybody, and welcome to another conversation in our series on why Black Lives Matter. Today is part 57, and the team felt that it would be a great way to just take stock of where we're at and what has happened and how things have shifted in our lives and our experiences as we have had this conversation for just over a year. So we'd like to welcome all of you to our conversation and also to the team. We're going to open up the conversation and allow it to flow quite easily in terms of our conversation today. Also, please feel free to share your thoughts, insights, experiences as you've healed along on this journey with us. So yeah, welcome to part 57 of Why Black Lives Matter.
Thank you, Granville. Yeah, I wanted to share a little bit of what I have been experiencing since being in this discussion. When I started out at the beginning of being in this discussion, I was really defensive. It was also very, I guess you could say, like naive of some of the things that I kind of just brushed off or didn't really look at, especially when it came to like the hurt of people of color community. And really being in that victim mentality. There was a really strong energy that I was sitting in of feeling like a victim, feeling like the world was against us, that we're not seeing that energy of powerlessness, and really just feeling like really no hope. But as I've moved through healing and being in this discussion, I've really been able to recognize and feel the true power that people of color have, and also recognizing my own divine power and being able to release the identity that society gave me and really claiming my own identity in the way that God made me. I also find that I don't experience as much contrast of that space of hurt where like people, white people were usually like reflecting to me this hurt that I still had. It hasn't been reflected nearly as much. And I find that we're actually able to have more of an adult conversation, a conversation around love and healing instead of feeling like I have to defend myself or defend people of color. um, I found that a lot of people lately are very open to learning, open to understanding and finding that oneness and that union. And so for me, it's really changed because the community I live in is predominantly white, and so it's really helped me be able to just show up in my true power and really claim myself in that space, and really allow myself to be a teacher in that space instead of a victim. So for me, it's really made a difference in my life to be a part of BLM and to really have these discussions, because I find that I show up differently compared to what I used to. And I've also have even more compassion for my brothers and sisters of color. Before this, I was really defensive towards the Black man. And now I have just deep love and compassion and understanding for him, and really desire to hold space for them as they heal and move through um, that area where they're healing. And so, yeah, it's just really opened up my heart a lot. I have way more love in this space than I did starting out. So it's really made a huge difference in my life.
Thank you for sharing. I really relate to like letting go of that victim mentality. I think what this year has taught me is to truly ask myself what is inherited from structural racism and what is actually based in love. And so that includes my patterns, my environment, all the things that don't feel good for me as a Black woman. And I definitely feel like more powerful, like I have more strength, and that it's not as hopeless as I thought it would be. Like when I think of this discussion, I think about not settling for miserable life or even an okay life. Like people also deserve to have a divine life because we are divine. And yeah, I really appreciate it. Like in terms of process, I think like I'm able to feel my feelings more peacefully around like topics that do bother me and that are related to racism. And also, I do feel this shift to peace that you mentioned, where my immediate reality does not like reflect any hurt from other people. Of course, there's still racism, and like I do talk a lot about racism with like my colleagues and my friends, whether they are people of color or not. But it's like my immediate reality is not as effective as it used to be. And yeah, I feel really good about that. And I feel really confident to say that, you know, having experienced a different way of healing is not, you know, demonstrating and the old system that we knew, I can honestly say that this works and that it's definitely a movement. It's a path, it takes work and patience, but it does work and it does get you the result of living peacefully.
So for today, I'm going to actually pick on people, or popcorn people. So Khalida, how has your life shifted with the conversation?
I'm just like thinking, I was like, I don't know that I have a list like Nisha and Yuri do. But for me, I think when things come into your life and when moments happen, it's always a good thing to be able to digest those things. And communication and conversation and community is always that. And so that's what I think that this weekly forum has been for me. I can maybe count on one hand, not even when I was like, kind of like, I don't know if that session resonated with me today, but for all 50, whatever, I got something out of it that was able to, because I could see and partner in community with others, I was able to heal something within myself. And so that's always a blessing, right? My time is precious, and I don't know that I would show up for the vast majority of those if it wasn't something that was meeting a need immediately. In terms of a list, though, I think what it's done for me, it's allowed me to have hope that the information and this healing and where we are in the world and the things that we get to do, it's kind of getting out there, and it's not being bottled up inside of me personally or anyone else. And that's hopeful for me, and that's freeing in a lot of ways too. And so if something happened, you would see something like a shift within like kind of the world, And I do think it's a correlation in that, you know, I don't know if we weren't doing it, if it wouldn't have happened, but I believe that we were powerful and we did something to do so. So I think just the mere fact of communicating and being in community and being able to kind of release and talk about the thoughts that brought us to start this and what still exists, but it's hopeful and yeah, that's encouraging.
Awesome, thank you. And for you, Anastasia, how have you experienced it? What has been shifts? And it doesn't necessarily have to be external shifts in your reality, but if your reality has shifted and there's something that you'd like to share there as well, that would be really awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say, I know a lot of people mentioned here that compassion, like that they like have a lot more compassion now after attending this every week. And I would have to agree, because like I had this situation recently where I went to this like family reunion, and as you can imagine, like family reunions are kind of triggering. And it was like there was a lot of people of color there. I mean, like pretty much everyone was person of color, and like someone was like, why is she so pale? And like I just kind of like was like, oh shit, like okay, what does this mean for me? But like I took a step back and I was like, well, like, you know, like he doesn't really like know any better, like understand, or like he has his own like perspective, you know, that he's also working through. So like we're like both helping each other to grow in that space. So I'd say compassion is definitely like my biggest development here, because like before I probably would have been like super defensive, like, oh, like what, like I swear, like, you know, I'm mixed or whatever, like, yeah, Kanisha knows what. But I just really had compassion, because like we're all like fighting our demons, so to speak, in our own ways. So it wasn't like I don't have to take things personally. I can just heal what I need to heal. And yeah, and yeah, I'd say compassion. Like if the more I think about it, I'm like, yep, compassion. So
And Diana, you are one of the more recent joinees or participants to the conversation. So I wanted to just also find out your perspective on where the healing journey has taken you to so far.
Yeah, for me, it's just been really nice to like have a safe space to like process through all of this. Before I joined, I didn't realize how numb I was to a lot of the upsets around the topics that we discuss, and how much it really impacted me without me even knowing it. And so it just feels really good to like have this space to openly move through it and have the support to move through it, and recognize that like I'm not in it by myself. Like we're all moving through this together. And yeah, it just feels really like comforting to have that support.
So yeah, thank you. So thank you to all of you. And the reason why I did it in that way is just I think it's one of the things that I feel like we've really been on quite a journey. And when the topic came up, it was quite fitting that we actually take stock of where we came from. And I feel like sometimes we forget to do that. And sometimes we forget to celebrate how far we have come and appreciate the work that we personally have done for ourselves, and possibly even for other people that we may or may not know about. And, like one of the things that stood out for me as we've been going through this is I did not realize the extent and the level of upset attached to some of the topics that we have gone through. And I'm talking personally. So there have been times when I've been like, right, that, very scientific about what we're talking through and where we're going. But at the end of the day, every time we went into a place of deep healing related to a certain topic, there was a sense of relief, a sense of release as well. Like, I didn't realize the extent, and again, I think it's possibly something that all of you have touched on, that we didn't realize the extent of what we were holding on to. And so if you don't necessarily realize the extent of what it is, you aren't really able to even pinpoint where to let go. And I think this conversation and our conversation has been, for me, just the allowing the conversation to flow so that I learn to let go. So that I learn to identify where the upsets are sitting for me. And as we work through the healing, collectively, we find more and more peace in relation to our identity as people of color, our identity as people, as Black people, our identity as people within systems that may not always have benefited us, or sometimes may have directly disadvantaged us. And so, yeah, it's kind of a powerful healing journey, because now where I do identify contrast, the contrast isn't so that I just actually glaze over it and glance over it and possibly even sweep it under the rug, because I'm not understanding how it's impacting me, because I was the person that felt like, well, okay, so that's that, but I'm carrying on with my life, and as far as I'm concerned, this is kind of working, and this is kind of working, and this is kind of working. But at the end of the day, all that kind of working was not working. And so it was useful and healthy to be able to just go through the process and go like, okay, but I actually don't like that. What's it saying to me? What is it pointing me to? Where do I have healing to do in that space? And it's been such a profound change, because when we started our BLM conversation over a year ago, I wasn't certain where we were going. I knew that I wanted to be here. I knew that I wanted to be part of this team. I knew that I wanted to have the conversation, but I didn't know where it was going to take me. And after even 6 months, I just felt like there was always more. There was always more in that place. And I'm gonna use a very weird analogy, but it was almost like this Pandora's box that had layers in it. And the myth of Pandora's box of unleashing all sorts of crap on humanity if you actually open the box. And I think that's been for me the journey of opening the box and looking inside it and finding the places where there were pieces of healing for me that I was able to go through, and it didn't break the system. And I'm talking about my system. It didn't break me to look at it. And that has been the beauty of this conversation, that in being able to look at it, I've been able to heal it and find even more peace and understand that, yes, there's contrast, but also the contrast kind of diminishes more and more and more as more healing takes place. And as we've found some really interesting things to delve into, which had some significant healing pieces. So yeah, that's been kind of the journey for me. It feels like, in hindsight, it's been a journey of discovery. And it's probably been one of discovering myself more in this process.
I love that. Yeah, what you bring up there is something that both like Dee and Kalita touched on, like not knowing if like some of the things that we do really makes the impact on what's happening out there. For me, what I recognized was that because of the healing that took place within me has now generationally changed for the generation to come after me in my family. When I started, I was where Dee was when she talked about last week about not being able to trust the divine masculine, not knowing she could trust God, all of that stuff. When I came into this discussion group, I was so angry at like my biological father, who's a Black man, and I had so much anger and hurt and pain in that space and betrayal. And through healing in this space, and then also with the help of MAP, I now have a very loving relationship with my biological father. When I started BLM, I had no communication with him, absolutely no communication. Like he was dead to me. But because I had to move through this healing, I was able to really heal in that space, bring a lot of love and compassion into that space. And it really helped me understand my father in a different perception, see a different way compared to what I knew. And because of that, that also changed the relationships that I have with my brothers who are from that side. It's like all of a sudden I now have loving, open, compassionate communication with men of color instead of avoiding them or being angry at them and defensive with them. And so I had a lot of compassion for Dee last week when she was talking. So I was like, man, I was there. I used to be there. Like I understand exactly what she's moving through. And so for me, I had to really look at like how much I have healed and how far I've come. And what I think I've only been here for like 7, 8 months. Um, I mean, that's a shorter time than having a baby. Like so much had happened in that period of time because I was so willing to be open to the healing. Even though I couldn't see it at the time or understand what was happening, I knew that God had asked me to come into this space because when I started BLM, I was like, I mean, I'm only half Black. What do I have to bring to this? Like, that's how I felt at the time. That was the identity I knew. But now I see myself as a Black woman. I stand in that power. I understand what it means to be a Black woman and to have that knowledge and to know that I'm meant to share that knowledge. But for me to have that be such a dramatic change and not expect it, was not expecting to have a relationship with my father afterwards, it really goes to show that if you're completely open to the healing and to receiving it and to just look at that place and bring love to it, you're going to transform that space. And because of that, now my babies get to have the opportunity to know their grandfather. They get the opportunity to know their uncles, to know that side of that family instead of me just shutting it out because that's what I was taught. And so like BLM has been a massive impact in my life. And so I know that even though it may not show up in the world that way, it has showed up in my world in this way, and it will transform the way that I show up and the generations after me and my family will show up.
I do agree. I think the most significant healing that we have done, at least for me, is identity. And so I know that you had a lot to heal about being mixed, but like I definitely felt unconsciously that, not being seen as the standard of beauty of society today was like being less than. Having less opportunity was being less than my peers and people I was at school with. For example, my colleagues, my friends. And so, doing the inner work helped me to see that I am whole, I am not missing anything. And today, I feel like I have like much healthier conversations with people because of that. For example, I am able to have this conversation where we have more compassion for people, like for example, our parents' generation, and saying that it's a generational thing that we have compassion for us, but they need boundaries, and that we're paving our own way. and that we have compassion for people who diminished Black people to feel more safe and secure. And so knowing that it's not about me being, me having fault in myself, basically, like as believing that God has made a mistake, and more about like, purifying my reality and consciousness and returning back to that place where I know I am perfect.
Yeah, and I think that another thing that I think has happened for me is because of my background. I felt very responsible for leading a shift, because my background is very significantly based in HR, based in leadership. And so for me, it was this significant sense of responsibility to shift the team forward. And even just going through our process, it's helped me to release responsibility, knowing that I have a piece, yeah, but I don't have the entire piece. Somebody else has another piece to add. And so all of us bring those components of healing to this puzzle piece that allows me to relax into the fact that it is a team effort and it's a joint effort. And we are actually doing this together. Because one of the things I allowed myself to believe even before this conversation was like I had to do everything myself and I had to do everything alone. And just in being part of this team, I've been able to let go of that energy of responsibility so much more significantly than if I hadn't gone through this process with everybody. So it's allowed me to relax into my identity, into knowing that I have a leadership component in the space, but that I don't have to do it all. And I think that's one of the biggest pieces that kind of for me has been the journey of healing, is that I don't have to do it all. I don't have to do it by myself. I don't have to take responsibility for everything. But in saying all of that, I still can very comfortably and very peacefully lead and direct without feeling responsible.
Yeah, and I think what was I gonna say? Yeah, the first thing you learn about like being into and the Church of Union is that you can do this work alone. You can have it to you or bring about heaven on earth alone. And so we had to go through this process to heal the feeling of being alone with our problems, our issues, our upsets. And I clearly remember that in us saying like the first few weeks, how we didn't realize that the community had Black people in it, like people of color are not as many as we thought. And so it feels good, like to be supported, to have a team, a family, and see that you can heal with them and that you're going through the same things. And knowing that the Church of and the community, we have a demographics, like we are represented, we matter, and yeah, we have a safe space here.
Yeah. I was just feeling into that. And like one of the things that kind of stands out for me is just the way in which this team has actually grown together. You know, it's one of the things that because we have over the few months that we've been together, well, few months, over the year that we've been together, we have had quite a few changes. And I think one of the things that stands out for me is also just how we have learned to allow the changes to flow and to flow with those changes. And what the thing that stands out just for me is like how people have left, and it hasn't necessarily caused the team to fall apart. In fact, it may have been the exact opposite effect of bringing this team closer together and allowing for a shift in relating to each other in a even healthier way.
I love that because I just pulled a card and it's balance. It says, I bring a state of perfect harmony into my world, and I do so without judgment. And for me to personally bring that into my world, there was a lot of judgment that I was holding on that I had to really release. Not only towards, for me, it was the man of color, but it was also towards myself. I had a deep, massive amount of judgment towards myself. Because I wasn't clear on like who I was. I felt like there wasn't a space for me to really fit into. And as I've really healed in this space, I realized that like all space is for me. Like I can fill my space up wherever I'm at. That's really my job, is just to just be where I'm at. And really find that that's one of the things that I loved about this group, was being able to instead of trauma bonding, we were healing the trauma. And so we weren't coming together to trauma bond, we were coming together to really look at this space and learn and heal and bring that healing to the rest of the world. And really allow ourselves to be vulnerable and have that safe space, like Irene was talking about, like really have that safe space to have those hard conversations, have those conversations that would normally bring up conflict in our reality and in the world, but because we were able to really look at it and bring God in that space and truly just see the truth of it instead of continuing to believe in the lie, it really allowed us to grow as a team. That was part of it too, is because we were bringing love there. You're meant to grow, you're meant to expand, you're meant to come closer to God. And that was not something that I was prepared for prior to joining this team, because I wasn't for sure what I was getting myself into. But that's what I've noticed, is that I've become closer to who I truly am as an individual, but I've also become very closer to my family and just all people in my life. It feels like there's just this deeper level of closeness and oneness due to healing this part of my life that I didn't realize, because I was so much upset here, it was affecting every other relationship I had. And so now I'm able to really be open-minded. Like even Anastasia said, she was like, I went to a family reunion, and just things that I'm used to, like it would usually offend you. It was like, one, we got to see her maturity and her growth of her just stepping back and being like, oh, he's just teaching me here. We're both just learning here. Like, that is so profound. Like, that's huge that someone could step back and do that. And that's what we're teaching. And that's what we're learning here. But mostly that's what we're teaching people. It's like, you don't have to be defensive. You don't have to defend yourself. You can love yourself in the space and then move through that and learn and grow and come closer instead of creating more separation, or the illusion of separation, because separation don't exist.
I think I'd be remiss if I didn't like share that like sometimes in doing this and being here, it is a thought of like, okay, is this doing anything for like the broader audience, or is this doing anything for the broader world? And you know, I think some things we don't get to see, but we get to believe that that is the case and that something is changing. And if it's just changing in one person, like that's a win, right? And what we get to see though is that as a community, we're changing and we're learning and growing, and that's more than one. So there's a moment of like, oh, it's, you know, who else is this impacting, right? But that's also a cultural thing to be like, well, how many people done changed? Because whatever, right? But that literally doesn't matter when we're talking about healing and what God ultimately wants to do. And so, yeah.
Yeah, it really comes back to that saying, like, be the change that you want to see.
Mm-hmm.
Or like, well, I want to change the world. And it's like, well, you got to start with you, and really allowing yourself to be that change. And so when you had touched on that, I had to like think about like, wow, like because I have changed so much within myself and became the change that I wanted to see, that is going to be trickled down into my boys, my children. And so we get to be that, and knowing that I may not get to see the massive impact it will make for my boys later down the road when they treat people of color, but however they will do, it would be out of a place of love instead of a place of being naive or not knowing or just uneducated in that space. And so through this, it's allowed me to understand how to educate other people because I am now educated. And so it's like having to really be that change first, and then allowing God to move through you to allow that change to happen.
Yeah, I like that. I like what both of you have just said, because I think we had a point at which we were like, well, you know, what are we achieving? How are we getting there? Like, what's happening with our viewership and all of those things? And I think one of the biggest pieces of healing was to just take the step back. It was to take the step back and go, well, you know what? Does it matter what the viewership is? Or does it matter what we're healing here? And it was cyclical, because it happened in a couple of cycles, and in all of those cycles it just allowed us also to recommit to ourselves. Like every time that kind of thing happened, it was like, actually, I commit myself to being here. I recommit to doing this healing work, and it doesn't matter if somebody else benefits or not, as long as I benefit, because if I vibe up, my reality is going to vibe up, life's going to vibe up, we're all going to vibe up. It's just as simple as that. And I think one of the things that has been a profound teaching for me, or a profound learning for me, in being part of Twin Flames Universe and the Twin Flames Universe community, is just how timeless the healing is. Like, somebody could watch this in 10 years' time and find a healing piece, or they could watch it tomorrow and find a healing piece. And I think that's the profound thing about what you say, Kanisha, in terms of coming back to love and bringing love back to that place. And I think that's what we sometimes forget, is that as long as we're bringing the love back to where we need it to be, it doesn't matter what it looks like on the outside. I think Jeff quite guided us quite nicely in saying, don't lose sight of what's actually taking place here. Don't lose sight because you're focusing on the external. The purpose of your work is the inner work. The purpose of your work is the inner healing. Don't get sidetracked. And I think we have had to learn that over the year that we've been going through. In terms of like, okay, so things have changed. Where's our commitment level here right now? What do we recommit to? How do we recommit to doing this? And I mean, like Doreen and Anastasia, you guys have been here from like literally the beginning. How do you feel about that kind of thing?
You mean like how do I feel about just like staying focused on the inner world?
Yeah, that and just the cycles of recommitment that had to happen over the year.
Oh, like with like new members and stuff like that?
No, personally. So
Oh, just
what it meant
personally?
for you, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just like profound, the healing that we do here within, because like it's kind of like what Deanna said about not realizing like how much stuff you're actually numbed out to, like being here this long since the very beginning. Like a lot of my core upsets have really come to the surface. Yeah, I don't know, I'm kind of at a loss for words. Just like brain farting.
Well, I think sometimes the underlying question behind the viewership was like, is this worth continuing, I guess? Is the discussion worth having if there is no one watching or almost no one? And every time we've had our answer very clearly. And I have these moments like, like in moments of doubt, you can always ask God. And so I have this moment where I would ask, like, is this worth like keeping? Is this worth continuing? And are we going in the right direction? And so I find a beautiful thing is that when we have this challenging time and all of these questions, there's always like this little step, like actually, we haven't talked about that. And it would be good to talk about that next week. And so, and it's really beautiful. Like God is in charge of that discussion, basically. And we've had to surrender for, the timeliness that we've had on the discussion, I guess, especially at the beginning. Like we asked ourselves if it was for a few weeks, and then we committed for a few months, and then a year, and then more. And I guess it will continue and maybe change forms as long as the discussion is worth having, and as long as there is healing in this place. And so that's how I see it. And I think, thank you for bringing it, because it was quite an evolution in the way we see why Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, because one of the things that used to come up for me often when those shifts happened, or that the question popped up in my mind, like what is worth continuing, was like always the sense of, am I giving up on myself if I don't continue? And it was profound in the sense that every time I sat back and every time I felt into that space, the answer was always yes. I was giving up on myself when I didn't want to continue. It was always a resounding yes. And I was like, what is happening? And it got to the point where I was like, the question never came up again. No matter what shifted, the question never, ever came up again. And then that's when I realized the level of commitment to myself. Like I was going to be here until I had transcended what I needed to transcend in this space of healing. And so when I got to the point where I was like, am I ready to share the leadership more, even pass on the leadership more? The answer was also a resounding yes. And that's when I knew like I had walked it to the point where I needed to walk it to. And so there was an opportunity for other leaders to step into this place. But I wouldn't have been able to get to that point if I dropped it like it was hot. If I dropped it like a hot potato kind of thing, but there were moments over the year where I was like, yeah, if you stop now, you are giving up on yourself. And I think, this has been one of our, well, it's been the longest commitment I've had to a live conversation. And it feels healthy to recognize and appreciate the power of that commitment. To the extent now where I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of ready to transcend it. I'm ready to share it in a different way. I'm ready to participate in a different way. I don't have to be at the forefront of the entire thing the way I had been in the past. And it feels healthy to have come to that full circle feeling of, yeah, I spread my wings a little bit in one direction and somebody else can spread their wings a little bit more in this direction, and it's like, it feels like fun and it feels healthy and it feels like a greater partnership now.
Absolutely. I love that you bring that up, because having you lead and move through what you've moved through, you have given us opportunities to be able to move in that too. But you taught us first. That was your role, was to teach in that space. And then when the student is ready, they will appear. And then when the student is ready to become the teacher, we will appear. I even know, like, even doing intro and closing for me, like not even like a month and a half ago, I was like, oh my God, I can't do it. No, I won't do it. I will never be able to lead this discussion because I'm so terrified in this space. But you gave me an opportunity to work through it, and I've really just watched you and observed you and being able to really ground that. And now I definitely feel confident in that space to lead myself. But one of the things you also brought up was the commitment, having to recommit. And I believe everyone's here for their twin flame. And commitment is one of the 8 keys of your harmonious union. And God is always going to put you in spaces to help you heal and love your harmonious union. And this space for me was huge for me to heal my deep upset with the divine masculine. I can't come into harmonious union with my divine masculine if I'm so defensive and angry and mad at the divine masculine. It ain't gonna happen. And so understanding that I really had to commit in this space first, and that really helped prepare me for my commitment of my harmonious union. And so everything that you move through, no matter if it's work or a friendship or family, is always preparing you for your harmonious union. And your harmonious union is the same way. It's going to have layers where you heal something, and then you're just going to go deeper into a different layer, and you're going to heal from a different perception or a different point of view. And so to really come back to you, like, okay, I if I leave here, I am really abandoning myself in this space. And it's like really looking at, are we going to continue to look at our reality to know that our healing is working? Are we going to keep looking at our reality for our happiness? Or are we going to continue to go within and know that our happiness and our results are going to come from how we actually feel? Do we feel peaceful? Do we feel love in this space? If not, your job is not done. That's really what I've learned. Like, if I don't feel good in this space, there's something here for me to look at. There's something here for me to love. And really being committed to yourself in that space of not giving up in that space until it feels good, until you have transmuted it and been able to walk away with it with peace, instead of like, could have done more here? Is this really complete? It's really having to have that deep understanding and intuition with God, and to be able to hear him and to be able to allow him to guide you, even if it feels uncomfortable, even if it feels like there's not more I can do here. But unless it feels peaceful, it's not time for you to move away from it. So I love that you shared that, because for me, it was like, I don't feel peaceful leading here. And then once I really worked through that space, I came to this place where I was like, wow, I actually really do feel confident here. And I can now move forward in this space. I can now fully love this space. So yeah, it really just comes back to loving and having that commitment to always bring love to that space, having that commitment to not leave until you feel peaceful, and really being able to humble yourself and take full responsibility of your reality, and really choosing commitment towards yourself and towards God, because He's always leading you exactly where you need to be. And that came back to like feeling like I have to do things alone. I find that when I'm trying to do things alone, it's because I'm trying to shut God out, and things don't go well. It really kind of just blows up in your face, or it just slows down and it feels sluggish. And so really having to commit to that union with God and knowing that He's putting you exactly where you need to be for your highest growth, for your harmonious union. Everything is directed towards your harmonious union with God, yourself, and your person. And so being completely committed is huge. And by having to recommit in this space is always the time that God's also asking me to recommit to my inner work, recommit to my harmonious union. If He's asking me to recommit in one space, I guarantee He's also asking me to recommit in almost every other space in my life. It's all one. There's no separation there.
Yeah, I love everything that you all have said, because like I was reflecting on the same thing as Granville, about like, like, do I have purpose in this? Or like, I think even Yoreen briefly mentioned about like, oh, or that many people watching this anymore. And just really looking at the real reason of why we do this every week. And, it's just because of God. God wanted us to come together in this space. And it's a really good space to have like this collective healing for the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah, one of the things that Jeff said, sorry, because you talked about in our discussion, was is your focus on the reality of what's happening, or is your focus like your inner, like what's happening within you guys? What's the shift that's happening within you? And one of the things he said is don't get fucked. And when I thought about it, I was like, you know how many times I fucked myself over by trying to look at the reality for my results? I totally heard him when he said that. I was like, oh, that's where I screwed myself over, is like looking at the reality and like, did my healing work? Like, it really slows you down, because that's not where your results come from. You get to experience them sometimes from there, but your true result will come from how you feel within. So I just wanted to put that point there.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like I'm really starting to learn like what it means to heal like on a consciousness level, I guess, and how we've said in past discussions, like we're each the one child of God, and as we heal, it heals consciousness. And so I've been kind of reflecting on like what that looks like practically. And I'm starting to realize like as we heal our upsets, like it brings in more people who are open to healing the same upset. Like I feel like Kanisha is a really good example because she's moved through a lot with the divine masculine, Black males in particular. And like now that's exactly what I'm moving through. And it feels like she's kind of like paved the way there. And like now I can move through the exact same upsets. And so I guess at first I was thinking like if we heal consciousness, then as soon as we heal, everyone else is healed in this exact same space. But it looks like it's more of like as we heal, now more people are like, this upset is coming to the surface for more of us, and now we're more open to healing in that space because the path is now open, which is really, really nice. And so I feel like this group is, and we've said this like a bunch of times over, but this group is like paving the way to heal consciousness in this space. So yeah.
Girl, you hit me in my feels. Thank you for sharing that. So I didn't even think of it that way. So I appreciate you sharing that insight, because you're absolutely right. It's like Jeff and Shaleia are a prime example of this, of like knowing that they had something when it came to twin flames. They had this information and they had to pave the way first. And then by sharing as part of themselves so open and vulnerably, not knowing, like Jeff was like, I want to do this, and God's like, yeah, but you're going to talk about twin flames and teach twin flames. And you're like, the fuck I am, like, I want to do this. And God's like, no, you're going to do that. Because he listened to God and healed in that space and did that, we are all here and healing these places that we had no idea needed to be healed. Our soul knew it, and that's why we were led here. And so, yeah, having someone pave that way, for instance, and being able to help the next person move through exactly what they move through. That's the whole point of Ascension coaching, is you will work through something, and then ironically your next 5 clients are moving through the same upset, but it just looks a little different on the outside. You're like, oh, I got this, I'll just heal through this, I got you. It's exactly how this works. And so yeah, when they're open to it and they're ready to heal it, they will show up and they'll be able to move through it so much more compassionately and quicker, instead of having to like be the one to like cut down all the nonsense and the garbage to pave that way. And so I'm so grateful that you shared that. Thank you.
Yeah, Kanisha, it's literally chopping trees and carrying water. I constantly laugh at that analogy because, like, it's literally just the most fitting analogy, like chopping trees and carrying water. It's literally that thing of paving the way that Yana was speaking to. Like, somebody has to be the first person to chop a tree so that you can or even just to clear the road in front of you so that you can go down that road. So like, it just feels fitting that in all our conversation, that's the point, that's the kind of the point where we came to conclusion of this conversation, because we literally have 1 minute to go. So I want to go, like, I feel like it's fitting to conclude on that, just to say, there is always going to be pioneer energy. There'll always be pioneer energy. The point of it is, when you get the call, do you accept the call? And then allow for the path to reveal itself. We didn't know where we were going. We didn't know what we were doing. We knew that we wanted to be here. We almost knew that we needed to be here. And as we healed all of those kind of things, there's more people that realize they need to be there. They need to walk that path. They need to heal in that space. So yeah, it's, I think it's just fitting, and it's nice to be able to wrap up today's conversation to say that there's always going to be a path shower. There's going to be a path follower. When you are the path shower, it might not feel appropriate at the time, but it is always the appropriate thing for you. So yeah, I want to thank everybody for today's conversation, and to everybody that's followed us and shared their thoughts with us as well. We'd like to invite all of you to like and subscribe to our Church of Union YouTube channel, where you will find all our previous conversations in our series on why Black Lives Matter, and we will see all of you next week. Thank you, everybody.